It's all been about him. So, but I think we may see the real man today. I think I was remembering, Nick, what happened shortly after we lost the Brexit referendum, and in fact Boris Johnson launched a leadership bid and then decided to pull back from it, and he gave a very long and rather rambling speech actually, but you did see a much more humble version of Boris Johnson, and I hope that is what we will see.
Fraser Nelson, you know Boris Johnson well. He's a former editor of the magazine that you now edit. Have you any hints of the sort of tone he might take this morning, of how he will be coping personally with this?
Sort of humility to try to combat the image of intense arrogance which was taking over, an almost Trumpish refusal to leave when it was clear to everybody else it was over. I was looking back on the excoriating words which Boris Johnson used to describe Gordon Brown when Gordon Brown would realise that the time was up. I think he realised he was becoming the Prime Minister that he spent so much time as a journalist warning us against. So he will be able to point to some pretty big achievements. I mean, winning a massive majority at a time where no other Tory MP could have done that. Getting Brexit done, fulfilling the wishes of the referendum. But after that, it was failure after failure. So he'll be looking, I imagine, at what was achieved 2 years ago, not pretty much over the last 18 months. And looking and pointing out the foreign policy legacy that he's got. We've now got, he probably, that's the best thing about this government's achieved, a genuine global Britain, allies to Japan, to Australia, to Ukraine. But at home, I think he'd rather draw a veil over much of this.
I think it is an indication of the debate that might now take place in the Conservative Party, that there are some who don't think that that is anything like an achievement. So Camilla Cavendish, you were reacting as you heard Fraser Nelson say that.
It's a shame you're not in the room here, Fraser. Look, I think Boris Johnson has spent a lot of time in the last few months having his photograph taken with Zelensky, who was the most popular politician on the planet. I think that any other Prime Minister would have done what Boris Johnson has done. I think that the MOD had been arming Ukraine for a long time. I think we can all be proud of that, but I'm afraid I don't think Boris Johnson can claim great deal of credit for it. And when you talk about our allies being Japan and Australia, well, they were allies before. What we need now, if we are going to make global Britain global, is to rebuild so many of our broken relationships.
Now you have, let's talk about the future. You have, I suggest, probably only one candidate to run for the leadership who is likely to believe what you believe. Maybe two. Jeremy Hunt and Tom Tugendhat.
No, not at all, actually. I'm not that simplistic about it. I mean, I think this is not actually about what I as an individual believe, Nick, or you. This is about the country, and this is not about the party. And I do wish some of these politicians would stop talking about party.
So, in other words, if it isn't, as it were, finding someone who's just aligned with your views, what do you think it is?
I believe, I think Rishi Sunak or indeed Sajid Javid have made themselves possibilities because they have finally had the courage to act against this Prime Minister. I do feel very strongly that anybody who's still in the current cabinet simply cannot lead this country into the next phase.
Do you accept that, Fraser Nelson?
No, I don't. And with regard to many candidates have served in the cabinet, I don't think it can be disqualified simply because you answer what you saw as a call of duty. But that's up to the Tory party to decide now. I imagine that we'll get leadership in the parliamentary round next week. Probably there'll be, by my guess, at least 7 or 8 candidates, whittled down to 2, probably by the end of next week on Friday. And then 2 will go forward to the country. Perhaps not all summer. Perhaps they'll do a shorter timetable.
When we say to the country, we should point out not to the country,
to the country. And of course, the country is, I'm afraid to say, the Tories will be dodging the judgment of the country for quite some time. If people suggest they lose a third of Tory MPs if an election was held tomorrow.
What makes this such an extraordinary day, and I have reported on every one of these leadership crises since Margaret Thatcher fell, is that many of the candidates who will run to be our next Prime Minister, I think it's safe to say, large parts of the public will never have heard of them. They simply won't know who they are.
Yes.
I mean, I include our new Chancellor, Nadine Zahawi, Fraser Nelson. Can someone who is that unknown, I mean, even John Major had become well known in the year before he became Prime Minister in 1990, can figures who are almost complete unknowns beyond Westminster really run the country?
Yeah, this happens quite a lot in politics. You get somebody who's got a pretty low profile, but they see that as a good thing, a new broom, a new face. I mean, to think that not a lot of people can say what job Penny Mordaunt does right now, that she's the bookmaker's favourite. And then you've got Tom Tugendhat, who's never had a job in government at all. He's also in the running and indeed one of the top 5 or 6 favourites. So this is how John Major was a surprise and in the end a pretty big election winner, and ultimately a successful Prime Minister.
It was, but he had been Foreign Secretary and Chancellor, Foreign Secretary, albeit briefly.
Yeah, but my point is the obvious candidates very seldom like to win leadership elections. People get elected for who they're not who they are.
Well, you know, you've only had seconds to think of it, but we need a name from each of you, not who you're backing, but who's that unknown who you think is most likely at the moment to come through?
I would say Nadine Zahawi. He is the one with the most momentum, and he's the one to watch.
I agree with that. I thought that when he took the chancellorship, he was hoping to be John Major. I'm not sure that's going to work, but I do think actually, Nick, it matters less whether somebody is well known. What matters is whether they can show that they are serious and that they can build a cabinet which is truly of all the talents. That is one of the things Boris Johnson failed to do.
Camilla Cavendish, Fraser Nelson for the moment. Thank you.
You are listening to an extended version of the Today programme. We stayed on air after 9 o'clock this morning because of the news that seemed imminent at that point and indeed emerged about 10 minutes later from Downing Street. Let's get a summary of what's been happening from Caroline Nicholas. Within the past half an hour, it's emerged that Boris Johnson has agreed to resign after one of the most extraordinary periods in British political history. More than 50 ministers and party officials have stepped down over the past 3 days, calling into question the Prime Minister's integrity and competence. A Number 10 source said Mr Johnson had spoken to Sir Graham Brady, chairman of the Conservative 1922 committee, to inform him of his decision. Boris Johnson will remain as Prime Minister until the autumn, to allow the Conservatives to choose a replacement as leader. He's expected to make a public statement in the next few hours. Mr Johnson had appeared determined to stay in office, despite warnings that he would be heavily defeated in a fresh leadership election. The Defence Committee Chairman, Tobias Ellwood, told us he was glad Mr Johnson had finally recognised the damage the affair was causing to the country and its international reputation. Speaking on this programme, the Attorney-General, Suella Braverman, said she would run to be the party's next leader. Caroline, thank you. It is just after 9:30. Let's take the long view, or the longer view, of the dramatic developments of this morning. Sir Anthony Seldon is on the line, political historian, someone who has talked to many prime ministers while they're in office, but also after they've left office. Morning, Sir Anthony.
Good morning.
What do you make of the circumstances of this particular resignation?
Well, it's a short premiership, 3 years, but no premiership has ever gone down in flames like this one. In 300 years of British premiership, there have been 55 prime ministers, and none has been so spectacular, so public, so humiliating, and possibly so damaging, not just to the reputation of this particular prime minister, which is in a way neither here nor there, but to the office of prime minister and the country.
Really, that's just explain that. Damaging beyond to the individual. Do you mean that there is a legacy to the system after his departure?
Well, you never know if there will be a legacy until it happens, but it certainly hasn't been helpful to have had such a disputatious premiership and to have it, thank goodness the agony is now over, but the longer that was protracted, the more potential for damage. It causes damage. The premiership, the history of the premiership, the idea that the public we don't have a written constitution, it's made by the lived experience. Therefore, we need our prime ministers to behave with decorum and to follow the unwritten rules.
So humiliating and possibly so damaging, not just to the reputation of this particular prime minister, which is in a way neither here nor there, but to the office of prime minister and the country.
Really,
So
that's just
significant.
explain that. Damaging beyond to the individual. Do you mean that there is a legacy to the system after his departure?
Well, you never know if there will be a legacy until it happens, but it certainly hasn't been helpful to have had such a disputatious premiership and to have it, thank goodness the agony is now over. But the longer that was protracted, the more potential for damage. It causes damage. The Premiership, the history of the Premiership, the idea that the public have of it, we don't have a written constitution. It's made by the lived experience. Therefore, we need our prime ministers to behave with decorum and to follow the unwritten rules of the constitution and to give an example for others to follow. And for a prime minister to behave in such a peculiar way often as he did as prime minister, and to have become embroiled in so many issues of trust it certainly, put it this way, will have done nothing to embed the sense of trust and belief from young people. I'm talking from the Festival of Education at Wellington at the moment. All these young people, these teachers, we need to believe in an inherent sense of goodness from and trustworthiness of our prime ministers if they are to give the examples that all of us need to see. So I'm not saying that it will be a permanent dent to trust. I mean, after all, a number of events in the last few years have contributed in their own ways to damaging public confidence in politicians. But I'm saying that his premiership and the way that it's ended certainly hasn't contributed positively to that.
Well, Oz is a system based on conventions in large part, hasn't it? And based around people doing the right thing, behaving according to certain norms. That has really been tested, hasn't it? In the last 24 hours in particular, the convention that when you see the writing on the wall, you head to the door.
Yes, I mean, if only for one's... Look, there are a number of different ways that prime ministers do leave office. Those 55 prime ministers defeat in the general election, illness, or a major policy defeat. But most of them have the self respect to know when the chips are down, to know when they're losing the confidence of their key supporters in cabinet and among the backbenchers and the ministers at large, and to go before it gets ugly and frankly humiliating. And what is unusual is that it has gone on for so long. I mean, look, he could have resigned with dignity or some dignity after that vote, because it really wasn't a great vote of confidence in him, even though he passed it numerically. That would have made a different end. He could have shaped his premiership. He could have stayed on throughout the leadership competition and left with a lot more respect than he has in choosing.
Sir Anthony, are you still there? Sounds like it's...
he has, I think, lost that dignity.
Just a very quick one. Are you suggesting that he cannot stay on until his successor is in place, that they're likely to need someone else to be the caretaker?
Well, if everyone has now resigned, the significant figures have either resigned or said that they don't have trust in him, as many of his key figures have done in cabinet, including the most important job of all, which is Chancellor of the Exchequer. It does raise a question about, if they don't have confidence in him, will they have confidence in him to be the remaining Prime Minister, the caretaker Prime Minister?
Anthony, if I could just chip in.
So it will take.
If I could just chip in at that point, there is one of those who resigned this morning, the Science Minister, George Freeman, has tweeted exactly to that effect. Boris Johnson, he says, needs to hand in the seals of office, apologise to Her Majesty and advise her to call for a caretaker Prime Minister to take over today so that ministers can get back to work and we can choose a new Conservative leader to try and repair the damage and rebuild the trust. As you've made clear and endlessly made clear, Anthony, we don't have a written constitution. Is that possible? Could that happen? We've lost it, Sir Anthony, I'm afraid. He's lied. Let's turn instead, though.
It's absolutely.
Oh, sorry, Anthony, pick up again. Your line isn't very good, but just give us a very brief response, if you would. Okay, we'll come back if we get a better line to him, but it's an interesting suggestion which we can take up now with another of the ministers who resigned this morning. The Justice Minister, James Cartledge, resigned his position. He said in his letter that the judicial part of our constitution is precious, embodying the principle of the rule of law that is so sacrosanct. It was difficult
to put aside previous transgressions. But you, he said to Boris Johnson, have been a lion in Ukraine and deserved a chance. But you cannot now change and reset. Mr. Cartledge, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Why couldn't he reset?
Well, I think it was, the position was untenable. I mean, as I said in my letter, from my point of view, I was the courts minister. I felt that and you know about this, you've covered it on your programme, with the profound challenges in the criminal courts, I felt I should try and stay in post. It was, if you like, my duty. But, waking up this morning, you'd reached the point where it was beyond the absurd, whole position untenable. And thankfully, with further resignations, he's finally realised the situation, and the Prime Minister has now resigned, as I understand from what you just said, staying as caretaker until there's a new one in place.
What do you make of the argument that he shouldn't stay as caretaker, that he should, as your former colleague George Freeman suggested, pack it in straight away and let someone take over as a caretaker?
Well, I'm not sure I entirely agree with George on that, although he's a very close colleague of mine, regional colleague in Norfolk. I'm a Suffolk MP. I think that ultimately the Prime Minister is doing what I'm pretty sure Theresa May did the same thing. You do need the government to continue. He is the holder of the office to that extent. I think constitutionally that seems a reasonable position. It avoids, if you like, a great sort of question as to who would be the acting Prime Minister. We mustn't forget that point. And I think that really the focus will move now pretty quickly to having a leadership election. But in the meantime, obviously, the government does have to go on. And I'm sure, despite all that's happened, and it will be a huge blow to the Prime Minister, he will be able to fulfil that role of being the steward Prime Minister until...
But the problem with that argument is this, isn't it?
Yeah.
Normally, if you're a steward Prime Minister, you don't do very much. I mean, the reason that David Cameron concluded he had to go after the referendum, he said, look, I can't credibly lead negotiations with the EU now. It would be absurd for me to do that. Can Boris Johnson take us into a major row with the EU about the Northern Ireland Protocol, determine major economic policy about the crisis that the country currently faces, be sent into international meetings to discuss what we do about Ukraine? Can he credibly do all of those things for the next 3 or 4 months?
That's a perfectly reasonable question, but you could ask that of anyone else, couldn't you? I mean, if you had an acting replacement, they would have even less of a, should we say, a legitimate mandate, as it were, although obviously under the Constitution, presumably they could have one ultimately by virtue of the current Prime Minister, putting them in place, I suppose. That's my understanding. But no, you would have to ask the same question to them. I mean, essentially, he would not, be announcing major new policy changes. He would be there to respond to events and to ensure that there is, all the background stuff of government carries on in the interim, and lots goes on that isn't seen that is incredibly important.
Mr. Cartledge, can I ask you, literally, I need a 5-second answer if you would. Are you still resigned, or now he's gone, can you pop back to the office and say, actually, you know what, I'd quite fancy my old job back if you wouldn't mind?
Well, as I understand it, I'm no longer a minister because I resigned my position. I mean, that's my understanding.
But if the caretaker Boris Johnson picked up the phone and said, "Look, no hard feelings, mate. We need you to do the job," you'd do it, would you?
I don't even know if that's possible. I think when you do this, you resign. It's a really difficult thing to do because I took my responsibility as courts minister very seriously. Once you give it up. I don't even know if there would be an expectation he would do that. I mean, he clearly will need some ministers to sort of hold the fort, and there are still some left. And by the way, if I just put on record, some of them who won't have resigned will have done for the same reason as me. They'll have felt that, they had to be in their post, and they'll have had a lot of criticism from their constituents.
Forgive me interrupting you, Mr. Cartledge. We're grateful for your time this morning. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome.
And as things stand, there are a lot of empty ministerial posts. Because this resignation has been so long in the coming.
We got way over 50, didn't we, during the day?
Yes, and then ministerial posts empty, given what we've seen this morning, must be close to 30 by now. Before we turn to the Institute for Government, Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, releasing a statement saying it's good news for the country. Boris Johnson's resigned as Prime Minister, but it should have happened long ago. He was always unfit for office. Let me turn then to Dr. Catherine Haddon, who is a senior fellow at the Institute for Government. Morning, Catherine.
Morning.
This position, which is, as we understand it at the BBC, Boris Johnson is resigning as Conservative leader, but he will continue to serve as Prime Minister until the autumn to allow a new leadership contest to take place. How difficult is it going to be for government to function given all these empty posts?
Well, as you've just been hearing, I mean, it is important that government continues. You do need to have ministers in place, and you do need to have a prime minister in place. So somebody's got to do that. If it's not him, it has to be the Conservatives decide on a effectively an acting prime minister, but there isn't a constitutional role for that. But it is tricky, and there are rules that when you have effectively lost confidence, which if he's lost the party leadership, that's the situation he's in. It's the same as Theresa May. You are expected to basically act as a caretaker administration. That means you must deal with the important issues of the day, any crises that occur, but you shouldn't be undertaking issues of a long-term planning without consulting others. So that would mean making sure that his cabinet are foursquare behind it, that he has party agreement on what he is doing. So you shouldn't have a prime minister who can just do what the hell they like after that situation has occurred.
Yes, but we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and therefore, assuming that he can be the caretaker prime minister, and I assume that would have to mean that some of these ministerial posts would have to be filled on an interim basis. Otherwise, you're short of people to do the job. It would mean, wouldn't it, that there couldn't be any major measures on the economy while he's in post?
You can still deal with major measures. I mean, you've got to remember back in May 2010, we had a hung parliament. There were coalition negotiations going on. This was still in the aftermath of the financial crisis. There was a euro crisis going on at the time. Alistair Darling had to make huge decisions about the British response to the euro bailout. These kind of situations do happen. We've had changes of government in the middle of war. What you would need to do is develop a responsible government, make sure that you had people in positions that represent the different wings of the party, make sure that your entire party is comfortable with where you have got with this government. But that's the question for the Conservative Party, is whether or not they think that Boris Johnson will be able to do that, and whether after the last 24 hours they have trust in him to do that. But it is something they're going to have to resolve, because we do need a functioning government.
The argument has always been, hasn't it, if I could jump in, that you could only have one, as it were, one Prime Minister, one Chancellor. I remember during that process of coalition negotiation.
And now on radio for Longwave and DAB Digital Radio, it's time for the daily service, led by me, the Reverend Richard Carter.
Oh, Claire. Claire, you there? Claire.
Yes, I was muted. I didn't realize it. Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm very impressed by that interview you gave to Snorkelborg way back in March. And
Oh, yes.
it was a very in-depth critique of Christianity, and very effective and poignant as far as all the details and facts of history and where the West has arrived, as far as not having any options left. White nationalism has failed, Nazism, fascism has failed, communism has failed, Christianity has failed. All of their replacement isms have failed. So now they're turning to no-hide laws, no-hidism, because they realize they've run out of options. But it's truly a sort of like a commentary on basically the end times having reached the end of the line. It's sort of a verification for it that we are at the end of the line. There are no more options left for them aside from having to face the truth and face reality and live up to the fact that, yes, their replacement God, their false religion, their false mechanical concept of Jesus has been just that for 2,000 years, for 2 millennia. Snorkelborg, what is he? Is he Dutch or is he Scandinavian? He sounds Dutch.
Swedish. His parents are Swedish. He's Canadian. And his parents were evangelical Christians, missionaries, in fact. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's why he's so fully aware and understands fully what function Jesus serves for Christians and Christianity in relation to Judaism and the Jewish scriptures, the Torah. The way he described it was that Jesus is a fulfillment of Torah, right? He's a fulfillment of the laws, and he exempts all the Gentiles and the whole entire world from, following the Hebrew scriptures laws for humanity, not just for the Jews. And Jesus is a modification by way of his a sacrifice, by way of his being crucified by the Romans and the Jews, but primarily by the Jews, as a means of negating the Torah and creating something new, which is an amalgamation of the values of the Greco-Roman world and the pagan world mixed in with watered-down Judaism from the time of the Alexanders, Philo Alexander, the primary, what would you call it, syncreticist of his day.
Right. I don't think his knowledge extends to the detail that you have just described.
Right.
I don't think it does, but
it doesn't. He rejects it. He ignores it. But his basic explanation is that Jesus is a fulfillment of the Torah, and therefore we don't have to follow the laws of the Torah. If what I wanted to add, what really got my mind kind of, the energy going, the sparks, I got antsy. I got like, wow, I need to answer that. It's basically he is either ignorant of the Caesar's Messiah thesis, or he's aware of it and he's ignoring it. Proto-Christianity is not Jewish. It's Greco-Roman, pretending to be Jewish. It's historical revisionism. That's the most bitter and most difficult pill for Christians to swallow, especially Reform Protestant Christians that believe that a Christianity that was pre-Roman was somehow organic or somehow syncretic by means of the interaction between Jews and Gentiles, when it was not. It was 100% state organized and mechanical in a sort of like in a subterfuge manner. Its purpose was to subvert. Its purpose was to co-opt, usurp, by means of intellectual and spiritual deception. Writing the Gospels is a response to the Torah by Greco-Roman intellectuals and by Hellenistic quasi-Jewish intellectuals in the service of the Roman Empire. Now he can't come to terms with that, but it's the glaring and bright and unavoidable light of truth. It's like shining through in a logical and rational manner by way of research that has been done about early Christianity, first and second century Christianity, proto-Christianity, or Christianity in its incubation when it was gestating to become a state religion that was not adopted but implemented by Constantine. It was a long project, being architected and being built over a couple of centuries before it became the adopted state religion of the Roman Empire by Constantine. And in the early first part of the 4th century or 3rd century, no matter how you want to count it, 325, Council of Nicaea. And what was the other one? Thessaloniki,
the Edict of Thessalonica.
The Edict of Thessalonica and all that. When it became official state religion and was fascistic, and it had a sort of like authoritarian edicts as far as forcing people to believe in it, and it started being spread by the edge of the sword by the Romans at that time, upon their barbarian subjects or peasants living under their rule in the Roman Empire and on the fringes, on the borders. That's how they started spreading it. It wasn't by way of a gentle persuasion. It was by means of force, conquest, rape, and forced indoctrination of the children, and that's how it spread. And also by means of the Romans, just like that prima nocta thing. It started way back then. It's like taking the women of these barbarians and making children out of them to slowly sort of Romanize them and Christianize them. It was barbaric. That's the way they spread Christianity. It's distasteful to talk about the truth but Christians prefer the mystery of proto Christianity, this so-called loosey goosey, as he describes it, as if it was organic, as if it was actually winning over people and had popularity. Right. The true history being exposed by Atwell and Berman and what's his name, Valiant and Eisenman and all of them, is that it was far more premeditated, mechanical, and deceptive, the history, and had a lot to do with the cults of the Roman Caesars. Actually, the original intent, the original purpose, shape-shifting and reforming, and it was the framework in the first and second centuries for what became Roman state Christianity or Catholicism, the universal Roman faith. It wasn't. For all of the arguments that they like to make about Suetonius and Tacitus having been anti-Jesus and anti this cult of Jesus.
Can I stop you? Please tell me what Suetonius and who was the other guy?
Tacitus, the Flavian historians.
Right. What did they say?
Well, according to what the apologists, the Christian apologists say, is that they give a sort of a verification proof that Jesus had existed, even though they were born well after his lifetime and death. They had mentioned Christians, but they were very not so clear references to the Christians, talking about them in a negative light. The early Christian cult that had developed in Rome. It developed a life of its own. If you go to that, Joseph Atwell gave a very good interview to Sean Stone many years back on his show called Buzzsaw. It's no longer available on YouTube, but it's available on Gaia TV. It's paid. They make you purchase it. It's an interview about the Caesar's Messiah thesis. And Sean Stone made a point of saying that Christianity may have begun that way as a tool of military psychological operations and propaganda on the level of political religious propaganda. That was its original intent. That was its original purpose for why it was constructed. But then it developed a life of its own. It was adopted. It was seeded. It was breeded into the Roman Empire, and then it got into the hands of philosophers and intellectuals, and they took it and ran with it and gave it a life of its own. That's why so many schisms had occurred. That's why so many different forms of Christianity took place in the second century, in the early part of the second century, and then into the time of Constantine. There had been many streams, and that's what they were fighting over in order to create one universal stream for the empire, refocusing it on its original intent, which is secretly worshiping the Caesars as gods, but by way of the avatar of Jesus, by way of the frontman image symbol of Jesus, and Snorkelborg, whoever that guy is, was making the case that somehow the New Testament is anti-kingship and anti-kings. Well, he needs to really read Caesar's Messiah, and he needs to read the book Creating Christianity, James Valiant's book, and Bruno Bauer's books about Christ and the Caesars and all. You cannot get people that desire to want to live free and be free of tyranny and free of fascist tyrannical rulers like the Caesars or the emperors to believe in Caesar as God in a direct manner, where this man is alive and you're worshiping him as a living God. You have the scheme, the ruse, the deception was that the concept of the Jewish Messiah, it gets reworked gets readapted and gets molded into the Jesus figure, which actually is a sort of like the conduit or the bridge for these emperors, these kings and monarchs to claim that they are related to him in some way, or that he himself gives them the divine right of kings.
Yes,
And
exactly. The divine right of kings. The whole purpose of Christianity is to support the divine right of kings.
yeah, but
That's all it is.
he didn't seem to understand that concept. He wanted to argue and debate it with you by claiming and stating that the New Testament and what he calls the Old Testament is anti-king, is anti, the rule of man over other men. But he does not understand the deep layering and the typology of the Gospels and of the Jesus invention. I mean, it could be willful.
Okay, I will tell you what I think he understands. He is saying Christianity is based on Judaism. He hates Jews, therefore he hates the Abrahamic God. The Abrahamic God is evil. Joseph caused the famine, and white nationalists have to reject all of that.
That's the guy that said that Joseph brought about the famine in Egypt. What a douche! I mean,
Did you hear that bit when he was reading from the translation of Chabad? What it said in the book of Joseph, and he said, well, according to his reading of it, Joseph caused a famine because he did all those things. He took all those measures that must have caused a famine.
No, the famine came about before Joseph was even released from the pit. I mean, he interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams, but he was still in the pit. He was only brought out of the pit when his advice to the Pharaoh, bared fruit. Just by his having a premonition and properly interpreting the dreams of the Pharaoh, he caused the famine. He caused. Well, this is how retarded. Wait. The Jews can affect nature. The Jews can. You know what brought about the famine? It was a huge fucking volcano. That fucking volcano somewhere around the world. It was a major super volcano that erupted, and it caused like a drought, or it caused like a weather anomalies whereby the rains and the streams, the wind streams, or the whatever things had changed around the globe that caused, and this has been documented for that time period, the weather events that caused that famine were the forces of nature. And for him to go off, it proves to me that Adam Green and this character, people like them, they're losing their minds, or they're so desperate as to try to blame the Jews for everything that they'll reinterpret everything just to refocus their hatred and accusations and resentments towards the Jews. And it's God's will. I'm not gonna. I can call them names. I can call them out. I could say they're insane. I could say they're losing their mind. I could say that they're bitter, butthurt pieces of shit. Sorry sacks of shit. But at the same time, I'll make my peace. I'll make peace with it, and I'll realize and I'll accept that God wills it. God does not want the Gentiles, at this stage of history, liking the Jews, or warming up to the Jews, or welcoming the Jews, or hosting the Jews. I mean, he's doing what God wills of him. He's losing his mind. So is Adam Green. They're off in so many different directions with their trying to analyze and deconstruct and see things through the eyes of Gentiles that will always blame the Jews for everything. And it's expected, but even what the Egyptians a few years ago, and it happened again this past week. There were shark attacks in Sharm el Sheikh.
Oh yes, the German woman got
she got eaten by a shark. Yeah. And so this happened about a few years back, and again, tourists were killed by sharks in the Red Sea in Sharm el Sheikh.
Mhm.
And the Egyptian authorities had the nerve to say that the Israeli Secret Service, managed to manipulate the sharks, and they had control over the
See the
sharks,
Germans.
and they made the sharks eat the tourists, or they made the sharks eat some Egyptian that got eaten by the sharks. It's give me a proper name for it. It's psychosis. You know, it really is.
Right.
It's psychosis.
Paranoia, maybe.
It's Gentile paranoid psychosis. You know,
Right.
and he's showing signs of this by his, even he's well mannered and he's collected, and his delivery and is a very calm, and he has a calm demeanor. But the things he's saying in the tone he's saying, and the same goes for Adam Green in his American douchey way. It just reveals that they're undergoing a psychotic breakdown. It really is, in my opinion, a psychotic breakdown. This is what ends up happening.
It's their religion. Because if you take away that hatred of Jews, they're left only with being liberals, and they'd rather die than be liberals. So they will, continue with their low status, anti-Semitism, because they also know that in the West, if you express hatred against the Jews, you will be demoted in status, and everything that you say will be, dismissed, because it's a thing that will condemn you socially, politically. I mean, that's what they know it too, and then that's why they hate Jews even more.
Well, yeah, they're not being muzzled. They have the formats and the platforms on the internet now, alternatives to YouTube, and they're sounding off and they're venting. And God bless them, because I know at this point there are certain dynamics that you should be made aware of. Is that when Jews really begin to piss off the Creator by losing themselves amongst the nations, intermarrying and assimilating, and it ends up frustrating the Gentiles. It ends up with them becoming paranoid fanatics and psychotics.
Yeah, because if you believe in the whole thing, it's not the place of Gentiles to emancipate Jews. It's only God can emancipate Jews.
Truly. And once it's done that way, then it liberates the Jews to lose themselves, forget God, turn away from God, distance themselves from God. And then it leads to tragedies. Every time it leads to tragedies. And we're upon a tragedy like this again.
Yes, and I suppose the only circumstance in which Jews might be allowed to assimilate is if they lived in a righteous Gentile nation. And we go back to the Noahide laws, which is that, this is what you're supposed to be doing for these Gentiles. You're supposed to be promoting them. You're not supposed to be partying with the peasants. You're supposed to be, telling them why idolatry and blasphemy is not a good thing. And they haven't been doing it. Never once in their entire history have they been doing it.
Well, the Swedish Snorkelborg guy was, again, with that because of his parents' probably evangelical pride and his Christian Protestant pride from, Sweden, Northern Europe. He wants to sort of rub it in the face of everyone by repeating the same dogmas about Jesus, even though if he might not believe it, might be questioning it, he'll say that it served to basically negate the Jewish Bible or modify the Jew, and they take pride.
I don't think he believes in any of it, to be fair to him. I mean, he's saying, this is my heritage. It is, it is Christianity. It was caused by the Jews, and and I said, okay, what about liberalism? You can't blame Jews for that, can you? But I think he
doesn't understand how Christianity came about by way of the Jews' actions. It came about by way of war. It came about by way of resisting fascism, imperialism. The Jews rebelled against it. They wanted their national sovereignty. And the whole scheme of undermining their faith, their beliefs, their convictions, and their vigor and their fanaticism and their desire to fight to the death was the Jesus invention. And it's the big, huge, bitter pill for them to swallow and understand, and they don't want to face that reality.
So sorry, what's this about the Jews and the Jesus invention? Can you explain that? I didn't quite
Again,
get
it's like I'm telling you, it's the Caesar's Messiah thesis, and it's 100% true. Jesus is an instrument of psychological warfare, and he's an instrument of government and propaganda.
Oh, okay. The whole idea of, shut up and pray to Jesus. We don't want to hear you complain about, whether you think this law is fair or not, or oppressive or not. Just forget
or whether,
it.
or whether you're conquered or not, or whether you're living under occupation or not, or whether your temple has been destroyed and desecrated by pagans, having gone in there and had orgies, homosexual orgies, and also raping girls on top of the foundation stone, on top of the Torah. That's what Titus did. Full on desecration. Oh, we shouldn't be hurt by that. We shouldn't be offended by that. We shouldn't carry a grudge over that. Why? Because of fucking Jesus. Jesus died for your sins. And Jesus took upon him all of your whatever, the blood. Fuck you. I mean, 2,000 years of mind control and 2,000 years of indoctrination, and in such a cynical way. When you find out the origins and the truth of the basis for his invention, and how that was a mind screw, and it was a complete lie designed to get the Jews to swallow their own defeat, to accept a Roman conquest, and
because of the idea of Jesus was the one they should have worshipped, and therefore they should, that Jesus was a more powerful God. And
you have to understand the minds of those people at that time. It was, if you read or listen to Rodney Blackhurst, a PhD professor from La Trobe University, he knows, he puts himself in the mind of those ancients and how they functioned, and what their rituals were, what their habits were, what their modus operandi was, their MO. And it's totally different from what we are like today. They employed religion in a sort of like a interchangeable way with politics. It was 100% politics is religion. Religion is politics.
I mean, I say that, but they don't get it. Even now
they can't put themselves in the minds of those ancients. You have to put yourself in the minds of those ancients. You have to have a strong ability to think abstractly. You have to be imaginative, and you have to be a bit peculiar. You have to be a bit odd to really be able to think like those people from 2,000 years ago. And if you're somebody like Joseph Atwell, who can do that, if you're somebody like a Valiant who can do that, and others like Eisenman who can do that, then you have a clear picture of what was done. Apparently, Snorkelborg cannot do that, or does not want to do that. He's limited in his ability to do that, or he refuses, because it's too embarrassing. It's too humiliating.
Well, the thing is, I've had these discussions with him. He's saying, "Oh, well, everything's Jewish. The world is Jewish." And I said, "Well, what do you expect if you culturally appropriate their God?"
Yeah.
And there's of course everything's Jewish. If I stole your clothes,
they didn't just culturally appropriate our God. They paganized him, and they expect us, and then they rub it in our faces for centuries, and they expect us to accept it.
No, but whatever your, regardless of your feelings, if I stole your clothes, right? And they didn't really fit me, and but people will say, well, why are you wearing those clothes? They don't fit you. They're too big. They don't look right on you. And then I complain about your dress sense because I stole your clothes, and everything's wrong after I stole your clothes. That's what they're doing, I think.
Truly, but it's also you have to consider what their emotional, their sentiments. Because it lasts.
They don't even understand their own history.
But they're sentimental about it. He's very sentimental about European history. and
Yeah,
about the
because
count.
he thinks, Jews spoiled Christianity, and as I said, but it was always meant to fail. It was always meant to fail.
Well, it's a sad sort of a circumstance of history, but it's all the hand of God. God willed it. God, it's God that directed it. The Gentiles had their day in the sun in Europe with Christianity. I said they were like they had their moment of glory, and he could call it their grace.
Well, they cling to Christianity because they like the idea of waging crusades and murdering Jews and Muslims, in large numbers. Because all the white nationalist imagery, it's always of this, knight with his sword, killing
Right,
Jews.
it's their romance. I mean, there's nothing wrong. I mean, they can the Muslims have their version of that kind of romance in war and jihad and the holy warriors and everything. They romanticize that still in the movies today. I could see it on Islamic Arabic television. They harp on that, the glory days of the Crusades. They have their version, the opposite version of it. It's like the holy wars and the glory of it all. But to focus it on again on the Europeans and the Christians, it gave them purpose. It gave them cohesion. It was the glue, kept them together. They obviously continued warring amongst themselves, and nations in Europe constantly warred amongst themselves. Also, the schism between the Eastern and Western Church, Roman Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox and everything. They continued warring over Jesus and over power in the name of Jesus. I mean, what they use or what they've used over centuries is this demeanor of being, sophisticated, calm, and collected, and they have this decorum about them, and they do everything with this appealing and attractive sort of persona. That's what they use.
The civilized demeanor of the civilized barbarian, because that was what they were when they accepted the bargain of Christianity, of Catholicism.
And that's Esav. That's Edom. That's a clear description of Edom, Esav.
Yes, but the thing is it really, it was just this power play, because Rome was from Rome came the conquerors that used to conquer Britain and France and the
Scandinavia and everything as well.
Yeah, exactly. So when they ran out of ideas, when their politics was failing, Christianity was still the most powerful idea around. So they adopted it. I mean, I guess if you're being pragmatic, I mean, you think of the Chinese. Why did they choose Marxism? Because at the time it seemed the most powerful idea around. Because they weren't going to become Christian or Buddhist or Hindu or Jewish or Muslim. Because they were judging on how powerful these relative ideologies were, and they thought, well, if Marx is right and we get to the workers' heaven before all the others do, then we're on a roll. We'll go for that one.
Well, you know what? I can focus that same argument towards Christian revival, sort of adherents or supporters, proponents of Christian revival, either Catholic or Protestant, doesn't matter which. Because out of the desperation that we're seeing in the West, the total decay, and it's brittle, it's falling apart. They want the glue and cohesion of Christianity, and they want to revive it, no matter what they're hearing as far as
they can't do it. It's impossible.
I know it's impossible, but see, when they hear Gentiles, not just Jews. I just happen to be one of these really, I guess I have a grudge. Yeah, I do have a chip on my shoulder, even though I grew up in America, in a primarily, predominantly Christian country, and I benefited from it. I don't appreciate being lied to. I don't appreciate having been brainwashed and molested psychologically, because this was the predominant, most popular religion, and everybody eventually gets exposed to it and learns about it. And me as a Jew, I know the Christian stories. I know the New Testament. I know the claims. I had to know it because I lived amongst Christians. A
Mhm.
lot of Israelis don't know it. A lot of Israeli Jews are oblivious to it. They don't even know their own religion, so they don't know Christianity very well. They just know the claims of Jesus and everything, but they don't know the stories, and they don't know the objectives, the true motives, the true hidden agendas, the true purpose for the authorship and the writing of the New Testament. New Testament scholars that are skeptics do know, and so they become far more resentful of this close to 2,000-year-old mind screw arranged and engineered by fascist tyrants of their day that took new form in the forms of government we have today that still employ, to a certain extent, Jesus and Christianity. It was Boris Johnson himself. What would Jesus do? And George Bush, what would Jesus do? George Bush Jr., what would Jesus do? What would Jesus do? Fuck you. When you know what the Jesus is, what would the Jesus do? He would lie to you.
I have no idea.
What the Jesus would lie to your face because he thinks it's for your own best interest, or he thinks it's for the interest of the collective, or he thinks it's better in order to keep you in the dark. So your pretty little brain, your pretty little mind won't be too disturbed and won't be too challenged. Oh, the peasant classes of Europe shouldn't be challenged by the heavy truth of history and reality. They should be the subjects of the oligarchs, the kings, and the monarchs, and they should just be like pretty little babies, pretty little kids. Don't ask too many questions, and just rely on Jesus. Jesus has all the answers for you, baby. Yeah,
Jesus loves you.
Jesus. Oh, I'm satanic. Oh, the demons. Oh, they have possessed my mind. Oh, the demons. I can't stop. I can't stop listening to the demons. The demons are telling me to talk bad about Jesus. I'm satanically possessed. Fucking morons. And they're schmucks. They're schmucks. Even if their hearts are in the right place, even if I feel
Yeah, because the fundamentals are wrong, and they will always be vulnerable to this kind of manipulation as long as they hold to this idea, and they cling to it because they associate Christianity with Western power. And the thing is that they don't get it that 2,000 years is only 2 minutes for God if they believe in God, and they don't know. So if you challenge them, they go, I don't know, or they won't answer. So if you really believe in the Abrahamic God, you would have to concede that he, being eternal and supreme, would regard 2,000 years as 2 minutes. And so 2,000 years of Western imperialism or superior military supremacy is nothing at all, because all empires fail. And they always fail for the same reasons. They break their own rules. If Christianity did them any good at all, it was because they raised standards of sexual morality over and above what prevailed at the time of, Roman imperialism, because we know what the Romans got up to. We know what the Greeks got up to. Pederasty. That was how they got their rocks off.
And also divine prostitution in their temples. That's documented by Christianity. At least they got that right. That detail was correct. The Greeks and the Romans practiced orgies in their temples. Sexual fertility rites with the Holy Temple priests, the Holy Temple prostitutes, or the Holy Temple priestesses, and all that. That came from Baal worship, also in the Canaanites, and that happened in Egypt. What's known about the Egyptians is that they were very spiritual, but their spirituality was focused about indulgence and lust and hedonism and self-gratification. They understood the spiritual impact
They basically monetized it in the same way that certain things are monetized. It's like, well, if they believe in God, what would they feel about temple prostitutes? They would think that something that is actually pretty low grade and bestial can be given a divine sprinkling, a divine cloak if it's done in temple grounds. So hey, temple prostitution, what a great way of monetizing,
And that was actually, the first temple in Jerusalem, built at Solomon's temple, was also desecrated by a Babylonian idol worship of its day that had been exported into Israel by way of the Babylonians. And the women and the men of that time, a lot of them, had adopted Babylonian gods, and they were worshiping both the Hebrew God and the Babylonian gods, and they had gone as far as conducting orgies in the courtyards of the first temple. So there was a murder, incest, what do they call it? And idol worship. Those were the three things that got the first temple destroyed, and it was by way of worshiping foreign gods, but primarily Babylonian gods. Over here, up on the mountain, Haifa University, they found them buried in the ground. The Canaanite gods and the Babylonian gods, and it's well documented in the Hebrew Bible that the Israelites fell into idol worship, and it was the cause of their destruction. So now in Europe and in America, you have evangelicals, and you have very committed Christians that believe deeply in both the Old and New Testaments, and they see how the Israelites managed to condemn themselves and get themselves almost utterly destroyed and exiled many times, but they still compromise with Jesus not being an idol, even though he's built out of wood and or stone, and he's clearly a graven image in the churches. Even some even some Protestant churches still have
It drives me crazy. I think it's equivalent of you saying every night, were we to live together, that you're going out and you never go out, you always stay in. And I guess after 2,000 years, I stopped asking you why you're still in the house when you said you'd be going out. It's that kind of thing, I guess.
It's such a psychological sort of like a surrender. And these
They're
people
just lying to you, looking straight at you in the eyes and lying blatantly, and they keep sucking it up. That's what I can't stand.
And then they ask why they're so gullible, and why they get the wool pulled over their eyes by their leaders, or by their institutions, or by these maniacal organizations that hold all the power. They're kings and queens, they're monarchs, that they still sentimentalize, and but they want to be so intellectual, and so we're deconstructing, and we're analyzing, and we're investigating, and look at us, how sharp we are. But they can't make peace with the proven truth of why they arrived at where they arrived.
They can't even win an argument now, Sam. I mean, that's why they censor everything. That's why they hate Rabbi Mizrahi, who never went to a Western university, but he still wins all the arguments. I mean, that's a great thing about him, whatever most people think about him, because he understands the system, and he always has an argument, and you can't argue against, any of the things he says about God's existence. If Jews suffer, we have sinned. And I think all these university rabbis that he points out, and anyone who goes to university, they're basically indoctrinated into believing rubbish that they feel they have to support and promote because of their university education, and it doesn't make sense, and they can't win any arguments, and their sense of snobbery. It's like, oh, we're so sophisticated and cosmopolitan and whatever.
We're the establishment, and we're apparatchiks,
and you can't win an argument.
We're tools of the establishment. And that, again, Claire, is that for me, in my way of thinking, proof of the end of the end. We've reached the end of the end times. Because when they no longer have any ammunition, they no longer have any oxygen, they have no air left in their lungs, it's over. And what my rabbi said also, and this is a perfect segue, and thank you for the segue. What my rabbi recently said, it's like tangible now that the world of evil is ending. He said it recently, just in the past few days in his lectures. And what I want to talk to you about, because I think abstractly, and I always make the connections in this way, is what I heard yesterday in a panel, a sort of a group discussion of several different friends from different parts of the world. One was in Mexico, one was in Israel, Rafi Farber, that I made mention of, the economic analyst, and two guys in America. I think one is in California and one is somewhere in the South. I think South Carolina or somewhere like that. One is in California. So it's people from all around the world, just like us, having panel discussions and free stream of consciousness, or free flow of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to discuss the fact that, just like you said, there's no room left for bullshit, and the truth is taking center stage, and that's a sign of the end of the end, and it's a sign of the end of evil. It's a sign of the end of lies. It's a sign of the end of deceptions. It's a sign of the end of the power of the power broke.
It's just payback time for idolatry, I think.
Yes.
It's payback time for idolatry.
So it's the money powers, and it's the system of puppetry and control. It's the head of the snake, or the heads of the hydra, the snakes, that is about to be cut off. And it literally is the description of what happens in the end times, according to Jewish eschatology, that the forces of evil are beheaded. The Sitra Achra is beheaded. The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, is beheaded. And it's the most poignant is sort of parallel is the power, the money, the whole infrastructure of the money. That's where the heads of the snakes exist. And money is not a bad thing, and commerce is not a bad thing. I'm not one of these poverty preachers pushing poverty. That's where Christianity took it in that direction, and that's also a sickness. That's also incorrect. I'm not a proponent of being overly materialistic, but I'm just saying the nuance and the clear, not even the nuance, the clear sort of association with evil and the brokers of power and money, the engineers of power and money, being the leaders of the world of evil. All right, so I want you to open up this panel discussion, and I'll give you a timestamp. It's near the end. And that's where they make their clearest points. You make the associations, you make the connections, and we'll discuss it. I mean, you could play it, put us make us put it full screen, and play the last 10 minutes, because it was so worth listening to. Play the last 7 minutes of it. That's when
okay. So it's only 33 minutes anyway.
All right, so play like at 25 minutes. That's good. That's right. From there is good.
Okay, from the 25th minute.
Yeah, they get into the juicy material there.
Okay, let me share the screen.
I don't know. I'm feeling sort of very clear-minded, and focused, and I've got and I haven't taken anything, no fish oil, no nothing. I just very sort of, give me the right word for when your mind is sort of functioning really well. Anyway.
I guess my mind isn't functioning well enough to think of it at the moment. But I'll have a think.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Mm-hmm. And we know this. We know Kenneth Rogoff's research on debt to GDP ratio. All the statistics tell us you're past the point of no return. We know it. And unless you can use alchemy, and turn fiat dollars into gold, you're not going to be able to solve it.
Take it back 3 minutes more. Take it back to when Farber's talking, right there. Farber.
I don't know which one. Okay, so I'm going to take it to 20.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. fine right there. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
So you know, the rule of thumb historically is that your interest rate, your Fed funds rate, should be at least equal to the rate of inflation. Well, we're not even remotely close to that. So you still have highly, and just using the BS CPI number, you still have highly negative interest rates, and to some extent, that's almost the same thing as printing more money. So they're a long way away from arresting real inflation, and they can use their propaganda statistics and try to convince us of that. But on Main Street, people don't believe it, and it becomes obvious that they're lying. And that's part of this process that Rafi and Rob are talking about, where people just lose complete confidence in the Fed, the government, and the currency, and then it's lights out.
Well, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I agree with your assessment of CPI or the PCE deflator. Although, Rob, again, just to the degree that the Fed cites these, what do you see happening in terms of the next 6 months, or this path of going from hiking now to where we might end up?
The Fed's between a rock and a hard place. And I think those of us, I know you're in this category, Chris, everybody on this call's in this category. We all knew that the Fed would reach an end game at some point, because that's been the history of fiat currencies. Rafi does a great job of talking about that all the time. He did on Seeking Alpha, he does on your channel and on his channel. We know the system has to end eventually, but you have to remember it wasn't built in a day, and it didn't fall in a day. It does take time for this stuff to occur. I do think, and I've used this example, I think what they're trying to do is get certain people off of the Titanic before it sinks. I don't think they care about you and me, to be honest. I'm brutally honest. I don't think they give a shit about us. But I think that they're trying to get certain people off the Titanic into the lifeboats. And so they're going to manage as it goes down. And that's Powell's job, is to manage this situation. Powell knows the end game's here. He's not stupid. He came into the Fed wanting to tighten right away. He can't do it because of the position he's in. He's a generation too late. He can't be Volcker. We've had too much debt printed. You can't service the debt at 18% interest rates. He's not going to be able to hike anywhere near there. And look at what happened when they did a 1/4 point hike and then a 1/2 point hike, and then everything went to hell in a handbasket right off the bat. And it's going back to what I said: the marginal utility of each dollar printed is not only not as much as it was before, it's becoming negative because it's stoking inflation. So let's go back to definition of inflation, which Dave used on my show last time he was on. Inflation is an increase in money supply. It's not an increase in prices. Now, the media will talk about an increase of the prices, but what's happened, the money supply has already been blown up. It was blown up until 2020, and then 2020, it went near vertical. And so you have all that sloshing around. But as I pointed out on my show last night, most of it went to M1, which are more for the commercial entities. Less of it went to M2, which is more like savings accounts, money market accounts. So it wasn't going to we the people. It was going to the commercial end. And they were able to use that last bit of amount of money to eke out, whatever they needed to do. But now that the marginal utility of dollars is falling, the Fed's not going to be able to come back, and print that away. And they want to tighten because their theory tells them to tighten in this cycle. Modern monetary theory, Keynesian economics, you can manage aggregate flows in the economy by managing what? Supply of currency. They think that this goes on forever. It never has in history, but they believe that. So they think they tighten a little bit now, and then they ease later, it's going to be okay. But it's not, because they're at the point of no return. And we know this. We know Kenneth Rogoff's research on debt to GDP ratio. All the statistics tell us you're past the point of no return. We know it, and unless you can use alchemy, and turn fiat dollars into gold, you're not going to be able to solve that problem. So I do think that they're going to continue to tighten. They have a goal of 3.8% this year. That changed, by the way, from 1.8 or 1.9 in December. So they think they're going to get up to 4%. I don't think they're going to be able to. For every 0.5% that they get it up on new treasury issuance, it creates almost $1 trillion it creates about $1 trillion in additional spend that the government has to have to service that debt. And if you look at the existing bond market complex, when you raise interest rates and bond rates go up, the value of the currently held bonds goes down. That's going to exacerbate losses across the sector. We're talking corporate losses. We're talking sovereign losses. So they can't just do whatever they want. There are consequences to everything the Fed does. And so, yeah, they're going to hike some. And I think they're going to provide some cover for the cronies that essentially own the Fed. Again, private institution. It's not federal, has no reserves. Okay. Private institution until they can't anymore. I think we're in the middle of a deflationary crash. I think that's what Rafi had pointed out with one of his recent videos with M2 and the deflationary crash that's coming. And so I think they'll bring out the helicopters, but it's over. Okay. It's just, we're at that point. It's over. Now, how long that takes, like I said, you know, the destruction of economies don't happen overnight, but we're definitely in that 11th hour. We're at the last stage of it. We're at the point at which whatever they did before is not going to work. And so for people watching this video, you do have a little bit of time. I wouldn't say that you have years, but you have some time to position yourselves and to get ready. If that's precious metals, whatever you want to do, whatever you decide to do, you want to do that now. I don't think you want to wait, because the Fed, you know, there's nothing they can do now. They're trying to control the sinking of the Titanic. The Titanic's going down. The only question is, do you get your lifeboat, or do you jump in the water, in the freezing cold water? You know, that's your choice. Now, do you get on now into the lifeboat, or you take your chances with the water when it's obvious the Titanic's going down? That's up to you to make your choice.
Well, I appreciate that, Rob. And speaking of timing, we're coming up on about a half hour, so close to wrapping up here. And Rafi, I know it's getting late in Israel, so appreciate you being here. And any final thoughts before we close up for today?
From me, well, we're talking about, Rob was talking about a reset, and I agree that they're trying. And we use that term reset. And I was listening to Ron Paul today, his Liberty Report, and he was saying reason is too mild of a term. You know, you take a clock, you reset it, it goes back to 12. And there's no violence or anything. But like this is more of a revolution. We are at the fault line of history right now. So this is going to be more than a reset. But the question is, on whose terms will it be? And you know, I think we give the emperors too much credit. They're still naked, and they still really don't know what they're doing. And they can't engineer a soft landing, not for themselves, not for anyone else. It's not going to be on their terms. The public is much bigger than any one of them, or even any big group of them. It's going to be on our terms. When we kill the currency, when we kill the money substitute basically and go back to real money, it'll be on our terms. And then what's the most important thing is the people in the public that understand what has been going on for years. It is most important that they who understand morality, who understand monetary economics, who understand justice, that they have the resources necessary to orchestrate a real reset, a real just reset, where things can be set on better footing.
Well, that makes sense. I'm ready. And before we let you go, Rafi, would just point out you can find Rafi Seeking Alpha, the Endgame Investor, where he has his column that comes out every day. One of my favorite daily reads. And then also Friday, Rafi does his weekly Silver Report on the show. So Rafi, thanks for joining us today. I sure appreciate that. And Dave Kranzler of Investment Research Dynamics, any final words from you, my friend?
I don't have a lot to add to what Rob and Rafi had to say. I would just say I think they're being optimistic on how this thing's going to end up as it unfolds. And I think it's going to be really brutal for everyone. And I think if you want to make it to the other side of what's coming, so let me just put it in context. And I think we're looking at 2008 times at least 5 or 10 times in terms of severity. So if you want to make it through and see what the other side looks like, I mean, I think the only way you can do it is get rid of your debt and accumulate as much physical gold and silver as you can. Get out of the stock market, get out of the bond market, take your money out of the bank, because there's going to come a time where you're not going to be able to get it out of the bank. And I mean, I'm not saying go out and become a hardcore prepper, but these are kind of simple things that you can do to protect yourself and your family going forward.
Well,
and also just enjoy what you can while you can, as much as you can, because who knows how much longer this is going to last.
Yeah, and Dave, I appreciate what you're saying. It's not the easiest time for anyone because there is no exact set solution. Although I don't think you're fear mongering. When we look at what's happening, there is something.
I'm not fear mongering. It is what it is.
You can find Dave at Investment Research Dynamics, where he has his blog and also publishes the Mining Stock Journal and the Short Sellers Journal. So thank you, Dave, for joining us today. And Rob, any final thoughts there before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I would say, listen to Dave. He's right. It's going to be worse than last time. And I just say that from a perspective of I understand the Great Depression, not only from studying it, but for growing up in a family in which my parents were in it. My father fought in World War II on D-Day. My mother grew up in a farm in Great Depression. So my family understands and remembers the lessons from that time. It happens about every 80 years. We're at that 80-year cycle. But I do think with this being the end of the current system, it's going to be quite a bit different. It's going to be quite a bit worse. So I would say become a hardcore prepper. If you think that that's what's going to help you get through it, buy gold and silver, listen to Arcadia, read investment research dynamics reports, do all the things that you have to do. Don't just sit still on your hands, prepare. And if all you're doing is buying some gold and silver, maybe you're getting into some Bitcoin, whatever it is, that's fine. Do what you think is best. But be careful on underestimating this one, because if you study history, time is not kind to people who ignore history and don't pay attention to things that are going on around them. And if you want to pay attention, just listen to Chris's channel. He does a great job of documenting all this as we go through. And I think you could do a lot worse than listening to the guys on this show.
Well, appreciate that, Rob. And people can find you at Gold Silver Pros. And Rob, you're going to be up at the Silver Symposium next month, did you say?
Yeah, I will be.
All right. Well, you can meet Rob in person at the Silver Symposium. So I thank you for joining us. And also would like to issue a thank you to Kuya Silver, who brought us today's episode. Did have a note here. Kuya Silver is showing up on the top of the insider buying list.
They made the main points that I wanted to get across. And going back to the purpose that I wanted to show everyone, that little segment from yesterday's, panel discussion on Arcadia economics was that they're talking in the language I used. It's over. It's over. The deceptions, the lies, the half-truths, the matrix is coming down. And when the ultimate component of the matrix coming down is the original design of the matrix, the 2,000-year-old Jesus invention, government mind control, government deception, and government engineering of your life, of your belief systems, of your behaviors, of your finances, of your economic activities. Full dominance, a complete, what as Jones calls it, full spectrum dominance. Full spectrum dominance. If we can, and what what's his name said, Brzezinski to the CFR, that well-documented lecture he gave them. It's easier to kill 1 million people today than it is to control them by way of media propaganda or religion or all the means and tools and vectors of mind control and behavioral control. It's easier to murder 1 million people than it is to control their minds. So it is over. They regret having invented the internet and given it to the world. Some of the Satanists say, well, it was a fair trade-off because we have all the sickness, propagating, and spreading to every corner of the world, and people become tainted by it and poisoned by it and perverted by it. You can watch all of the most perverted and filthy and heinous and evil things you can ever imagine seeing. It's at your fingertips. But then again, you also have all of the truth that was being kept from you, all of the hidden truths that were being kept from you. So you have the privilege and the ability to see things the same way that a think tanks see things, or the same way that DARPA sees things, or the same way that intelligence agencies see things. They're privy to a lot of secret knowledge, to a lot of hidden occultic information, or just basic, historical revisionism and the truth about the real history. When the average common person has access to all of that, and it's at his or her fingertips, it's game over. So what their desperation and their backs are against the wall, and what do they decide? What's their ultimate final solution? Kill everybody. Fucking, it's time to kill everybody. It's time to call everybody. Let's get, sterilize everybody. Let's fucking molest them, full throttle. This is how these engineers, these are how these elites, emperors, whatever, kings with no clothes, are now out of desperation, and they're doing it out in the open, just telling you that that's what they're going to do. That's what they're doing to us, and they think we'll go along with it. They think they so manage to weaken us and pacify us or compromise us that we still won't function on common sense, logic, and self-preservation mode. They're wrong. There are enough people that are still alive and kicking and breathing, no matter how much you've hurt us, no matter how much you've fucked up. You convinced us to fuck ourselves up with your sick and twisted satanic culture. I'll take responsibility. I wouldn't call myself a victim. I was a willing participant, but I had my fun, and now I realize where it leads, where it ends up. It ends up in a total decay and devastation and destruction, degeneracy. It's really, it should end. It's over. That's why I'm fighting it. That's why I'll be in support of the social and cultural values that Putin supports. Not because he became also a Christian revivalist and Orthodox Christianity revivalist, and he's sentimental about being making Russia an Orthodox Christian nation again. Despite that aspect, where I did have my disagreements with Jesus and the whole history of Jesus, I'll agree with his stance on social and cultural conservatism and fighting back and stopping the perverts, stopping the degenerates from legitimizing degeneracy and making it normal or normalizing it. Absolutely not. That's where it stops, and that's where we make our stand. And it's not only where we make our stand; it's where we expose everything, and drop that fucking anvil from 100 stories up on the heads of the fucking self-delusional Christians. And also, any self-delusional moron that thinks that Jesus was a real person in the form of the Gospel's Jesus, when that's 100% government propaganda and psychological warfare that has survived the ages. And if you want to know how they managed to pull the wool over our eyes today, just look at the jizzbag, the Jesus, your lovable God-man that you love so much, that died for your sins. And Jesus takes care of me. Fucking morons. That's your vulnerability. That's your weak point. You refuse to let go of that fucking drug. It's a pagan.
They don't really believe in it, though. I mean, I don't think they want to admit that they've been duped.
But it's not. Again, they have to take responsibility. It's not that they've been duped. It's not that whether they believe in it or not. It serves as an instrument. It's a function of relieving their guilt. It still works if they adopt it, even if they don't believe in it. It's an imaginary friend that that calms their guilty conscience. Or
the corrupt bargain is that the priesthood is always necessary to operate this machinery, the machinery of this ideology, which is that you pretend to believe in Jesus and you pretend to express remorse for your sins, and the priest will pretend to forgive you for your sins on behalf of all the people whom you wronged, who never forgave you anyway. And this is the corruption, the disgust, and they still want to go with it.
Yeah, and when the whole fucking edifice falls apart, it's always those fucking satanic liberal Jews that tempted us to give up on fucking Jesus. Those fucking Jews. They gave us an alternative in the form of liberalism and secular humanism, and they're responsible for that. They took away our Jesus. They took away our Jesus from us. They not only crucified the motherfucker 2,000 years ago, they took him away from us. Now, they took him away from us with their liberalism.
But liberalism wasn't a Jewish creation, was it? It was a creation of the French Revolution.
Yeah, but the Jews latched onto it like fucking useful idiots for the past 200 years. And so they took front and center, stage for liberalism, leftism. The fucking Jews. Fuckers, those motherfuckers. Jesus is a motherfucker. Liberal Jews are motherfuckers. You're all motherfuckers, and you need to wake up. I'm bitter. I'm a bitter fucking Jew. That's what I am. I'm a very bitter Jew. Yeah, I'm a kind of like a crazy, twisted Jew. But because I had to endure all of that and try to make sense of all of it, I'm not happy. I'm not compromising with any of it anymore. Both, I'll throw the shit straight in your face. I don't care what's sacred to you. You've been shitting on what's sacred to us for 2,000 years in the form of your false religion and false God, and we had to take it. We couldn't answer you. Desecrating our religion, desecrating our God, desecrating the purpose of our religion, paganizing it, molesting
and it no longer works for them.
What?
And it no longer even works for them because hardly any Westerner is a confirmed Christian.
Truly,
they don't even.
But
it's important to believe that.
But wait, I'm being sacrilegious by talking shit about Jesus. And I'm a Jew, and I killed him, and I have to take responsibility for killing that motherfucker 2,000 years ago. And I'm being sacrilegious talking shit about him. Oh, go fuck yourselves. And you want to be truthers. You want to expose the global elites, the Satanists, and you can't deal with the core seed of how they fucked you for 2,000 years. Why? Because you were basking in the sun in your gilded cages, sucking up to Jesus and sucking up to the priests, and that giving you a semblance of a good life, whatever, for those generations, for those centuries. Go fuck yourselves. That's not being honest. That's not facing reality. That's not facing the truth. What, Ma?
They were living a lie. They were living a lie, and now the lie has been exposed, and they can't take it. There is a solution, but they reject it because they say they would rather die. And there goes Western civilization. And I was going to link it to the resignation of Boris. Actually, I was going to stream the 2 hours of the Today program on Radio 4 for your benefit, just so you can listen to the unfolding drama of the collapse of the Boris administration.
Oh yeah, you asked me what's worse, the Boris debacle or the Shinui and Naftali Bennett Lapid debacle? I mean, we went first, and it's like a sort of like a model or sort of like a paradigm for what's happening now around the world. Israel's fake bullshit government fell apart, and now England's fake bullshit prime minister, the unqualified douchebag, is leaving, and hopefully soon Biden will be gone. And it's a precedent for Western governments finally having their taking their medicine. The bitter
revolutions happen in July. We know the French Revolution happened in July.
Oh yeah. And things at the second half of this month are supposed to get more interesting. What Rafi Farber was saying is that he analyzed and noticed that the supply of money is shrinking. That actually the quantitative tightening is happening around also in Europe as well. In a hidden way. They're saving, they're bailing out the banks, but they're still trying to do quantitative tightening at the same time. They're at the end game, the end stage. No matter which direction they take it, will end up with an explosion of some sort, some kind.
Yes.
By some, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say about the money thing. You can keep borrowing, and as long as people borrow you can live high on the hog and pay for all kinds of things. But when the supply of credit dries up, when you tell too many lies and people don't think you'll ever even pay, it would be able to service the interest, then they will stop lending to you, and you won't be able to pay for your own accommodation or your food, and that is the worst case scenario, when you can't even buy anything because your currency is literally worthless because you and that would be the
You know that
worst
the euro
case scenario.
is a 1-to-1 now with the dollar. It's on par. It's like 98 cents to the dollar. 2
Well,
cents off.
sterling and the dollar.
No, the euro and the dollar. The euro and the dollar
Right.
are on par. I don't know. The sterling is also weakening against the dollar. You know that the dollar strengthening is actually the worst thing that can happen to the dollar right now. And it's
Why
a
is
sign.
that? Does it? Why is that though?
It's a sign of a what's called a crack up boom. You know, because everybody's a lot of investors are retreating to the least the least shitty currency in the world right now that can still get them some sort of
And they think it's a dollar.
yeah.
Okay.
To get them some sort of a return. And not only for those reasons, because they see the whole entire system, both in Europe and the United States, is very shaky, is very unstable. So they're retreating to what they believe is, the safety and refuge of holding cash money in reserve. That's why the dollar is strengthening all over the world. But you know what? By doing that, it's actually quickening the process of demolition.
What they call the dead cat bounce.
Yeah, but it's also it's causing a quickening of the collapse as well, because a stronger dollar has ramifications for the whole entire edifice, for the whole entire system, and how it doesn't function as it should.
What would happen to the American economy if the dollar strengthens? It would surely make the imports cheaper. No.
No, actually, it's the opposite. When the dollar is cheaper, I think it's that's for exporting. You're correct. It makes the imports cheaper. That's true. But at the same time, there's a deliberate sabotage of supply chains, and it's undeniable that there's too many suspicious things happening. And I don't see Americans wanting to travel and tour Europe now because the dollar is stronger against the European currencies, because Europe is in the shitter. No, I mean you're there, you see it, and people are on edge over there, I'm sure as well, not knowing what the day will bring. And Germany's falling apart. Their industry, their sense of
why don't they have a revolution? I don't understand it.
And France is
Maybe
also
it's because they're so old. It's the average age of these European nations that I think if they were all 20, with the proper religion, with able to work out things for themselves using common sense, there would have been a revolution ages ago.
Yeah, but they can't escape the sort of like what has accrued as far as what they owe, not to the Jewish people, what they owe to God, what they owe to the Creator that they maybe sometimes believe in, maybe some halfway believe in, maybe halfway believe in by way of the Trinity and the Jesus, the Creator that they have a problem making peace with. Like
yes, the idolatry and blasphemy of so many centuries. Well, I suppose
they'll have to atone for that. They'll have to make amends for that.
They can only atone by becoming Muslim, I think.
No,
just to show, we're sorry, we're going to do better.
I don't know if they'll go to that. They'll atone. All the ones that whether they were born into it, innocent of it, or propagated it and adopted it, and believed in it and tried to spread it, tried to indoctrinate others into it. Whether they were pure-hearted about it or whatever they were, they will have to atone by basically surrendering their pride, and they'll surrender their money. They'll surrender the value of their possessions. The value, the ultimate humbling is coming. I mean, it's not like they're gonna dig a ditch and throw themselves in and bury themselves. once they are humbled to such a degree that when the world, the evil world that we're in, the materialistic world with materialistic values, that make women so twisted and so what's the word I'm looking for?
Promiscuous?
Not just there's promiscuous, yeah, but what gives them all, gives them all of that freedom to manipulate and feel like they're top dogs, like that. What's the name of that song? Who runs the world, girls? Who runs the world? Who runs the world? What's her name?
That song.
What's her name? What's that bitch's name? She's
I've
also
never.
Luciferian Satanist bitch. Not dislocations. It's distortions.
Beyonce.
Yeah, Beyonce. Okay, bounce on my you know one say. You bounce on my you know what say. All right, so with that big butt, bounce on it. Anyway, so they're distorted. Everything's distorted. Relationships are distorted. Everything that was acceptable and normal has been distorted. And dislocated. The world is evil. It's as a result of materialism, egotism, pride, and about show me the bling bling, and all of that has become old and tired. But obviously, women will never get tired of that. That's their the source of their strength and power, and their ass is a material thing that you want to buy. And you can't buy it if you don't have the money to buy it, even if it's a legitimate relationship. You don't have the bling, you don't have the resources, no money, no honey, no money, no honey. So that's the world we live in. That's the world where girls run the world, like you said, the matriarchy, right? That their ass, whether they're hookers or not, is what runs the world. Right?
And men have no choice, because men will have to get whatever women want in order to attract a woman, in order to have offspring,
to bang her. Yeah.
And the only way they can control women is when they collectively, as men, agree to change the rules and change sluts and slut fuckers. And that's the only way to do it. And they won't do it.
That's your proposed solution. God's proposed solution, when he is already he's already here. He's descended. He's
the same as mine. Well, I mean, mine is based on.
He's already functioning, but when he's fully revealed, it's going to be the hammer coming down, and it's going to be a humbling, unlike the world has ever known or seen, aside from the flood, which is the worst of the worst. He promised never to do that again. But the humbling that's arriving when God is, being revealed, and he's going to reveal himself, is that your money's going to die. Okay, the value of your home is going to be turned to nothing. It's going to be worthless. Everything about your material existence and your material life is going to be trivial, just as trivial as the money is today. The money is trivial. People that don't know this are deluding themselves. People that are aware, that took an interest, that were intrigued by it, they'll say it. Rob Kirby also died. May his memory be blessed. He was also a bond trader in Canada and Toronto, whatever. He said this many times over. He's just like, you see all this debt, you see the trillions and quadrillions, and you say, it's like, I'm working for this currency, for this credit. If this is how I am supposed to survive and sustain myself and give myself, a purpose and sort of like what builds me. It's like, but the whole system, the whole edifice is trivial when there's trillions and quadrillions and it's all digital. And I feel like a complete doofus and a doof, paying taxes and putting my lifeblood and my energy and all exerting myself and my frustrations and anger into earning the rich man's digital heir. And this is what sustains me, and this is what's supposed to be my purpose for living and saving and all this. It's all trivial. And when it comes down, and God smashes it, he will come down and smash the motherfucker so bad that there will be nothing left of it. So women's ego, women's pride, especially women, will be utterly devastated. Not just their money, the money of their male, pimp, not their male slaves or male providers. That gets utterly destroyed. People will be crawling on the floor in agony. all the illusions that they believed in, everything they went along with, all of the trivial crap that they accepted as the building blocks of their lives get utterly annihilated. The whole architecture gets annihilated. And I'm looking forward to it because they fucking deserve it for not caring, for not having the aptitude, or for not doing the due diligence after having been warned for decades. And the warnings got louder and louder and louder, and now we're upon it. And then they can still mock like the builders of the Tower of Babel till the very last moment.
They're still in denial because, I start the conversation with them by asking, what do you think is the purpose of religion? And they're gone. They're gone. They can't have that conversation because they know where it's going. They'll know I'm going to say Christianity is kaput, and then because they I think fundamentally they also know that their laws need to be based on some kind of moral system that is considered to be fair enough, and they don't even have that.
But it's true. But you yourself said it, and I just said it. You said it's all based on fraud. It's all based on self-deception. They lie to themselves. The priests lie to them. The priests lie to themselves. And it's the same as the monetary system. It's all related. It's all correlated. It's all based on plastic, synthetic.
It's based on confidence.
It's confidence.
It only goes on if people feel that the person in charge knows more than they do, are smarter, more powerful, and when they realize that they're even stupider than they are themselves, that's when it all crashes and burns.
That's the point that Rob made in that video we just showed. It's like Rafi Farber said that he's in Israel. He moved from the United States. He took his whole entire family, and he lives on the Golan Heights. When he was recording himself outside with the open sky, that's in Israel. He's in Israel. He's a religious Jew. He's got a yarmulke, and he's an economic analyst. He's also one of the best ones out there that reveals a lot of the things that he's just like a truth teller that exposes a lot of things that are kept from us. Same as Mel K, and I'd say I'm in that category as well. I'm a bit of a maniac. I'm not as I don't have the decorum or the self-control. It's like I get very, animated about things and connecting them and telling the full truth without hesitation or without feeling any sort of,
Well, I think somebody needs to give it to them with both barrels about Christianity, and you're the only person that I found that will say these things.
I'm uninhibited. I'm not intimidated by it because I have full faith and confidence in the process that we're in and we're upon it. And the only ones that should be afraid and should be worried are the Jews living outside of Israel because their only refuge is in Israel. And I don't care if Mizrahi is a pro telling the Jews to return here. He should be here himself. That's a compromise. Him sitting on the fence, whatever, as good as smart and as effective as he is, he should be in Israel. He's also going against God's will. But the thing about it is that I'm in full faith and confidence that the whole system is proving itself to be at its end. Religious lies, religious fraud at its end, economic fraud at its end. Okay, social and cultural distortions and decay and degeneracy, all interconnected to fake religion, fake economics, fake food, plastic food. All of it is fucking
fake academics. That's the worst of it.
Academic.
They don't know anything, and they're even more afraid than ordinary people about talking about the things ordinary people want to talk about. Because they know that they're not, they're a dime a dozen. There are too many academics.
Yeah, it cannot be perpetuated any longer. That's why it's lost its effectiveness. It's lost its air, its oxygen, its fuel.
There are too many parasites. The host is gone.
Yeah,
because it's been devoured by the parasites. So the parasites will have to devour each other, and it won't be pretty.
Yeah, well, and once the whole illusion of the money and the security falls apart, then you'll see people's true animal nature come out shining through, and it won't be fun. It will be like a fucking zoo, or like a fucking safari, I gotta go help my mom out. So please post this to my wall. This was a good one.
Okay.
I was inspired by that discussion you had with what's his name? Skolky, what's his name?
Snorkel blog?
Snorkel blog, whatever. All right.
Yes.
So I don't want to put these people down. They try their best. You know, they're making an effort, but when they cannot come to terms with the full truth, and they have to find ways of blaming Joseph for the famine, or or you know, oh, we caused the plagues in Egypt, or we're about genociding people, genociding people.
Can I stop you just briefly, because I know an Irishman who convinced himself that the English caused the Irish potato famine. So you know, you guys are not the only. What?
The Jews caused the potato famine?
No. The English. You know, the Irish don't like the English, and there was an Irish potato famine. But I know actually it was John. Johnson.
Oh, it could be the Johnson.
Yeah, he said he thought the English. He read somewhere or heard somewhere that the English caused the famine.
And I thought, well, in some sideways manner, but I don't know. The thing about the Bible stories that they want to be, they want to scrutinize the Bible stories. It's just out of desperation because they don't know what to do anymore. They just don't know how to respond anymore. So they have to be critical and scrutinize of the Jews in like overly like an exaggerated way to find an exit, some sort of exit. Get me out of here! I'm trapped. I have to get out. Judeo-Christian, architecture. But I gotta go. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye. I have something more to say, which pertains to the resignation of Boris. So, what took him so long? I was going to play for you the last 2 hours. No, okay. The Today program from 7 to 9, and it went on until 10 because of the drama. And during the program, you know, more ministers were resigning, and it was quite fun, if you like that sort of thing. But the reason why Boris stayed for so long was that there was no one else, obviously better than him, and we know there are two people going for the leadership. We know Liz Truss is interested in it. She's foreign secretary. We know Suella Braverman is interested. We know Nadeem Zahawi is interested, and he will be. He might even get it because he's not stupid, but he is, well, very, very sinister indeed. I once saw him tell off Victoria Derbyshire for asking questions you would expect a journalist to ask about neoconservatism, about British foreign policy, and he basically, I can't remember the exact words he used, but he was, warning her not to ask too many questions. That was my memory of his exchange with Victoria Derbyshire. So he is very sinister indeed, and he might just become prime minister. Or perhaps the others might prefer Suella Braverman, who thinks that because she hasn't done anything much, she should be the one, because her record, as far as she's concerned, is relatively unblemished because she hasn't done anything, right? She hasn't done anything. She just made sure she didn't say anything wrong and took no risks, and therefore she should be another Theresa May. How dare she? And the other interesting snippet of information I have for you is that Michael Gove apparently last night told Boris that he should go, but as in a private capacity, as a friend apparently, and he was sacked for being the bearer of bad news. So this kind of pleases me, though I know there will be, unpleasant ramifications as Britain becomes even more the laughing stock of the world. But this means that we are closer to the time when people finally admit to themselves that democracy is dementia, liberalism is for losers. We haven't got a constitution. The British constitution that's called the unwritten constitution is a complete lie. It just means that our corrupt and incompetent politicians can do whatever the hell they like to us as MPs, as members of the legislature, because they control the law. They pass laws, they repeal laws. They can change the rules while the game is still in play. What is the game? Who knows? What is the game anyway? I would have thought that governing in the national interest would be the game of politicians. But they have something else on their minds. So I will repeat that I uncompromisingly denounce democracy, liberalism, Christianity, and feminism. And I know that these anti-immigration parties who are still dumb enough to fight elections or to even attempt to get their pathetic little groups registered are really not getting the whole picture or even a little part of it. It is sad that nobody else can have this conversation about the bankruptcy of liberal democracy. The people in charge, the BBC, we should talk about the media because the media tells us how we ought to think. So we might as well go straight to the media and talk to them. But what if they ignore us? We have to make ourselves unignorable. That is really the way forward. So forming your pathetic little micro-parties and not talking to each other, not talking to me when I have all the ideas, or the correct diagnosis, the correct prescription, the correct cure. If you don't think I have the right idea, then by all means challenge me. I am always open to challenges. But if people can't even get it together to say, Claire's wrong because of A, B, and C, then you know they haven't got anything. They are just as empty of the ammunition of truth, logic, and morality as the corrupt and incompetent politicians that they complain about. And I have the whole and holistic, comprehensive solution to the mess that we're in now. Thank you for listening.